Hi there, my name's Dave Chain. I'm the gym manager for Invercargill YMCA. This presentation is about our 21-day intermittent fasting program. The typical pricing for this program is $0 for anyone seeing a PT once a week or more, $50 for our members, $97 for non-members, and with that $97 we also give you 21-day access pass to the gym and all its facilities. The current pricing for this program, however, is that it's free during the COVID lockdown for all our members and those in their immediate bubble. If you would like to do the program, please feel free to email me at dave@ymcasouth.org.nz so that I can email you your manual with the recipes and menus, etc. in it. That's dave@ymcasouth.org.nz. A little bit about my background so you can get an understanding of where I'm coming from with this. I have a Bachelor in Physical Education from Otago University, a background in Corrective Holistic Exercise Kinesiology from the Czech Institute, Nutrition and Holistic Lifestyle Coaching also from the Czech Institute, and Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. I believe my purpose in life is to help people become and stay fit, happy, healthy, wealthy and smiling, and I'm always looking for new and better ways to do that. I firmly believe that if we are fit, happy, healthy, wealthy and smiling, we make better decisions for ourselves, and that has a better impact on those around us. I'd like to help people consciously evolve and thrive in their own health and wellness so that people can make better decisions for themselves and those around them. During this presentation, I make no claim to cure, heal, prevent, mitigate or diagnose any disease. The purpose for this presentation is for educational purposes only. None of this information is mine. It comes from people like Paul Chet, Dr. Jason Fong, Jimmy Moore, Dave Asprey, Dr. Michael Mosley, my own clinical experience and my own personal experience. I practice these principles as best I can, but I'm not perfect. I don't always get it right. In fact, I've probably failed more times than I have succeeded in fasting. The YMCA is in the business of building strong kids, strong families and strong communities, and one of the reasons why we're putting this program on for free during the COVID lockdown is because we want to express our core values of caring, honesty, respect and responsibility towards our members. This presentation is part of a 5-part process. The first process is the 21-day detox program, which is generally done with Lisa from Complete Wellness. It's about teaching people how to eat clean so that they can keep their bodies nice and clean and help them reset their health. The next one is the 21-day rapid fat loss program, which is about teaching people how to balance their hormonal responses to food. The next 21-day program is a ketogenic program to teach people how to use fat for fuel. The next 21-day program is about intermittent fasting, which is the one we're doing now. And following that is the 21-day corrective muscle imbalance program. And if you keep an eye on our Facebook page, we'll let you know when those programs are coming up. So today I'm going to be presenting the 21-day intermittent fasting program. And again, if you email me at dave@ymcasouth.org.nz, I can email you out a manual for this program. Within this program and the manual, you'll be receiving the menus and recipes, 3 health and wellness seminars. People have advised me upon doing this program that they've received an increase in mental clarity, they've lowered their lower density lipoproteins or LDL, they've had a decrease in body fat and or decrease in weight. They've also been able to increase their energy and they're sleeping better. As I mentioned before, typically speaking, people who are non-members doing this program would get 21-day access to our gym facilities. However, if you're doing this program and you can't get access to the gym due to the COVID-19 lockdown, you're welcome to go to the YMCA webpage and have a look at our news and events tab on our webpage, and there you will find some home-based workout programs that you can complete while you're doing this 21-day intermittent fasting program. I was first introduced to fasting about 21 years ago, and I decided right there and then that I liked food and enjoyed food far too much to want to go without. I also appreciated how irritable and angry I got when I was lacking in food and or sleep, so I just decided that fasting wasn't for me. However, over the course of time, I've been encouraged to explore the benefits of fasting, which the research suggests that we could live longer, have healthier lives, lower our LDL cholesterol, lower triglyceride levels, increase our energy, increase growth hormone, decrease our body fat, decrease our weight, and increase our insulin sensitivity and cellular repair. And about 5 years ago, my brother and sister started doing the 5 and 2 program made popular by Dr. Michael Mosley. 5 and 2 is about restricting your caloric intake 2 to 3 times a week. And I got some great results out of that, enjoyed it and didn't find it too taxing and didn't get the hangries too much at all. So I decided to move on to restricted eating time frame of 18 and 6, where you fast for 18 hours and only eat for 6. And from there I decided to extend my fasting muscle into 20 to 24 hour fast by fasting in between dinner times. So stopped eating after dinner on one night and then didn't eat again until the dinner the following day. I also found this was reasonably easy due to the magical powers of coffee. And from there I slowly built on my fasting muscle, and to date my longest fast has been for 7 days. And I now regularly practice some level of fasting and or caloric restriction of intake every week. Some of the benefits of fasting outside of our own health and wellness is that it's way cheaper than all the other diets that I've ever and eating programs that I've ever looked at. It's also one of the cheapest health interventions that I've ever seen. It's easy to understand. It has a very high level of adherence, and it's really easy to do. Some of the evidence for fasting comes from our spiritual leaders, Jesus, Buddha, the Prophet Muhammad. Nearly all of our major religions around the world practice some level of fasting at some time during the year. There are lots of anecdotal evidence and testimonials online if you care to go and have a look at them. There's also some great scientific, human and animal studies that have been done. And if you wanted to know more about those, I encourage you to have a look at Dr. Jason Fong's work. Also had some great personal experiences with fasting, some great growth and challenges, but also some great health and wellness benefits. The longest fast that I know of that's ever been recorded was for 382 days, and the gentleman that completed that lived on tea, coffee and soda water and some vitamins in order to complete that. For the most part, the advice that people are given when they want to lose weight, tone up, get fit, is that they need to decrease their fat intake, increase their carbohydrates, decrease their caloric intake, and increase their energy expenditure through movement and exercise. And while that's typically the advice given to us, I want to show you some evidence that perhaps suggests that fasting might be a better way to do this. The figure in this slide comes from Howard et al. It's a study on low-fat dietary patterns and weight change over 7 years. The woman in this health initiative dietary modification trial followed these principles for 7 years and showed that decreasing caloric intake and fat intake and increasing carbohydrate and increasing your exercise output doesn't always work. So you can see here on the slide that the calorie intake for these people went down, the percentage of fat in their diet also went down, their carbohydrate intake percentage went up, and their physical activity levels also increased. As a result of at the end of the 7 years study, you can see that the body mass index changed very little. There was also very little change in their waist circumference and their waist to hip ratio. Not the sort of results you would want or expect to see after following these principles for 7 years. Conversely, if we have a look at this slide from Hal Brons et al. Study of alternate fasting in non-obese subjects, we can see that the average weight loss was for 4 kg over a period of just 22 days of alternative fasting or intermittent fasting. Achieving fast results like this can be very motivating for people who want to keep these results going. But fasting doesn't just help us with weight loss, as this graph from Bhutan et al. Shows. It can also help lower our BMI, lower body fat mass. It also helps lower our waist circumference. However, it doesn't have a negative effect on our fat-free mass, i.e. muscle. As we'll describe later on, fasting actually increases our growth hormone production, which helps protect our muscle mass. It's really important to maintain muscle mass as best we can, because by having a higher muscle mass, we can increase our basal metabolic rate. Our basal metabolic rate is the rate at which energy is expended while the body is at rest. So the higher our basal metabolic rate, the more calories we burn through on a daily basis. Given the information we receive on a daily basis about how poorly we as a Western population are eating, I was very surprised to see this next slide from Wells and Busby, a dietary assessment of major trends in the US from 1970 to 2005. During their assessment, they found that the US during this time frame was actually eating more vegetables, eating more fruits, eating more grains, eating less red meat, eating more vegetable oils, less eggs, less butter, and less animal fat. And these are the healthy eating pattern recommendations that are given to us on a regular basis. So surely, if people are following those eating patterns and recommendations, then they should be achieving healthier lifestyles. So if that's the case, and these trends are accurate, why is the US ranked 9th most obese country in the world? Well, it might not just be about the type of food that we're eating and the amount that we're eating, but it may also be about when this food is being eaten. This current slide shows us that since 1977 to 2005, the number of meals and snacks being eaten each day has doubled. So how might this affect us? Well, if the previous two slides are correct, and we are eating more carbohydrates in the form of fruits, vegetables, and grains, and we're eating those carbohydrates in a more frequent manner, then we need to consider something called the insulin trap. The insulin trap suggests that as we eat carbohydrates, it gets metabolized into blood glucose. This then stimulates the pancreas to produce more insulin, and when insulin is produced, it helps take the glucose in the blood into our cells for them to use as energy. The other thing that it does is it stops us from burning fat and helps us store fat. Now, if you've already made yourself fat adapted, and for more information about that, you can follow our 21-day ketogenic program, then that won't be too much of a problem because your body can tap into those fat stores whenever it needs more fuel. However, if you're not fat adapted and you're carb adapted, once your insulin levels have lowered your blood sugar glucose levels, the brain starts looking for more fuel and we get hungry again. And so that cycle of wanting to look for more food begins again. We follow the same pattern. We eat more carbohydrates. The carbohydrates gets turned into blood glucose. The insulin is stimulated through the pancreas. That blood glucose gets taken into the cells. And we start to stop burning fat as a fuel and create more fat storage. So what would happen if we took the same amount of food and the same type of food and we stopped eating 6 times a day and we lowered that to just eating 3 times a day? In this slide we can see what happens to our insulin levels while we're eating breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then what happens to them during a traditional 12-hour fast. i.e. not eating after dinner until breakfast. And you can see that the insulin levels are very low in between the meals, and certainly between dinner and breakfast, which gives us a good opportunity to get into our fat burning zone. This next slide shows what happens to our insulin levels during a 16-hour fast, i.e. we're having lunch and dinner, and it shows that our insulin levels go down for 16 hours while we're fasting, and go back up during our lunch and dinner feeds, but it keeps us in a fat burning position for a lot longer. So what happens if we take that one step further? Well, as you can see here, we've got someone who's gone for a dinner to dinner fast, and the amount of time that they stay in their fat burning zone is greatly increased. So then if you could take the food that you would normally eat in a typical day and eat it in just 4 hours, then you would put yourself in a fat burning position for 20 hours. Some of the animal studies that have been done around this model tell us that if we take an obese mouse and we allow that mouse to eat whenever it wants to, it becomes morbidly obese. However, if we take an obese mouse and we put that same mouse eating the same amount of food but have it on a restricted time eating frame, then that mouse becomes obese, stays obese rather, but it also becomes quite fit. If we take a lean mouse and we give it food whenever it wants to eat, it becomes an obese mouse. But if we take that same lean mouse and put it on a time-restricted eating program, it becomes a lean, fit mouse. If we take that same lean mouse and we put it on a time-restricted eating program from Monday to Friday, and then allow it to eat whenever it wants on the weekend, it still becomes that lean, fit mouse. And although this is just an animal study, there's plenty of anecdotal evidence to suggest that this is the same for humans. If we allow ourselves to eat whenever we want, then we will increase our body mass index, not necessarily in a favorable way. And if we put ourselves on a restricted eating time frame, then we can manage our weight quite nicely. Before I go too much further, I want to clear up some myths about fasting. The first one is that it puts you into starvation mode. Generally speaking, if you're respectful about the practice of fasting, you will not go into starvation mode. A non-respectful way of going into fasting would be that you were doing 48 hours plus of fasting on a regular basis, i.e. 1 to 2 times a week. If you were doing that, then yeah, you probably would go into starvation mode over a period of time. But if you're being sensible about how you fast, then you should be able to stay out of it. Again, if you're abusing the principles of fasting, then it probably is bad for you. However, if you observe good sound principles of fasting, then it's been proven time and time again that it does no harm and that it's actually quite good for us. Next myth is that fasting can decrease muscle mass. In actual fact, the production of human growth hormone that stimulates and protects our production of muscle growth actually increases anything up to 1200% while fasting, depending on the literature that you read. That is, unless you're below 4% body fat, which most of us will never get to. Once you get below 4% body fat, then you will start to lose some muscle mass. But any fasting above 4% body fat, your muscle mass will be protected. You will still burn through some protein in terms of loose skin and skin tags, but muscle mass should be preserved. I personally have found that I have an increase in energy when I fast. Perhaps that's due to the coffee that I'm drinking. But unless I'm going longer than 4 or 5 days, then my energy stays pretty good. And most anecdotal evidence would suggest that that's true for most people. The next myth is that there's an inability to exercise. You may well have to adjust the density and intensity of the exercise that you're doing, but for the most part, it shouldn't change. If you are starting a fast but have not exercised before, then you will need to exercise, pardon the pun, caution if you're starting an exercise program, if you're just starting to fast. The last myth is that women can't fast, and while this may be true for pregnant women, breastfeeding mothers, it's not true for any other, for women in general. The other people that can't or shouldn't fast is those with type 1 diabetes, those with eating disorders, and children. There is a caution around people with type 2 diabetes. It's not to say that you can't fast, but you do need to check with your medical supervisor before starting a fast. Those with gout would also recommend that you check with your medical practitioner before you start a fast. Those with any cardiac or stroke conditions also need to check with their medical practitioner, and anyone with an HPA axis dysfunction or adrenal fatigue should avoid fasting until they've started to correct that. Anyone else who's not on the list above can fast quite safely and enjoy it. Some of the added bonuses to fasting are hormesis, autophagy, apoptosis, and within this manual that you'll get for this 21-day intermittent fasting program, you'll also have a list of cert foods that you can use, and I'll be describing more about NRF2 activation. Hormesis is a theoretical phenomenon of dose-response relationships in which something that produces harmful biological effects at moderate to high doses may produce a beneficial effect at low doses. In my experience, that there is a pretty strong hormetic effect with fasting, and certainly there's some good anecdotal evidence of it. Autophagy is the natural regulated mechanism of the cell that removes unnecessary or dysfunctional components for that cell. It allows the orderly degradation and recycling of cellular components. Apoptosis is the death of cells which occurs in a normal and controlled part of the organism's growth or development, and fasting helps this process out. The consumption of cert foods can help activate our centurion genes. These genes are very helpful in treating various age-related diseases. These pathways are also activated when we choose to restrict our calories through fasting or time-restricted eating. Similarly, our NRF2 pathways, which are very helpful to reduce the damage of oxidative stress and inflammation of the body, can be activated with food and food-like compounds, and I'll talk more about that later during the seminars. But this pathway can also be activated through both exercise and caloric restriction, including fasting. So the concept behind this program is to give you a bit of a taste test of all of these components that we've talked about. In week 1, we go through the caloric restriction of experiencing 5 and 2, which, as I said before, was made popular by Michael Mosley. In week 2, we go into some time-restricted eating with 18 and 6, made popular by Dave Asprey, where you will fast for 18 hours and eat for 6. And in the third week, we'll give the option of either redoing week 1 or week 2, or in week 3 you could go for a dinner-to-dinner fast, which is a sort of a 20 to 24 hour fasting period. And the main reason that I put these 3 options in the program is that it acknowledges that while we all look different on the outside, and we all function very differently on the outside. So one caloric restriction, time restricted eating pattern or fasting pattern that works well for me might not necessarily work well for you. But by trialing the 3 different variations, you can find one that works well for you and that's easily implemented into your life. It's been my experience that most people won't enter a fast, mostly due to fear. Fear that they'll get angry or hungry, fear of their own moodiness, their own hunger, their inability to focus on the tasks that they need to do, i.e. work. But all of these are manageable either through ketogenic adaptation, and to find out more about that you can join us for our 21-day keto program, and or bulletproof coffee or MCT oil by itself. And I'll talk more about those as we get into Seminar 1 and Seminar 2 of this program. That concludes the introduction part of the 21-day intermittent fasting program. The next video will be the first of the health and wellness seminars, and there'll be 3 of those. I encourage you and welcome you to join the program. If you'd like a copy of the manual, feel free to email me, Dave, at ymcasouth.org.nz. That's Dave at ymcasouth.org.nz. And equally, if you have any further questions, please feel free to send me that email.